Welcome to Mallett and Michelle on Dripping Springs, hosted by me, Michelle Lewis, and Steve Mallett.
Hey there, Michelle. How are you?
Hey there, Steve. I'm tired. It's hot.
Actually, I have a story about the heat today.
It's just, I don't need a story about the heat.
I'm going to give you a story about the heat. You are the heat.
I am the heat. It's hot.
You're just melting everything as you pass.
I know. It's just so hot. I'm trying to keep my yard alive. I'm out there. I get judgy looks from the neighbors that drive by as I'm hand watering, I'm legally hand watering my yard.
You're ruining the world by using water on your terrible lawn.
I spent a lot of money on that lawn. And, speaking of our guest.
People going to hate, Michelle.
They're going to hate. Oh, whatever. Get in line, people. Yeah. Get in line. Who's our guest today?
Keenan Smith from the city of Dripping Springs. I've met Keenan a few years ago. I think he's the historic preservation. What's his job title at the city? He's in charge of making sure that the historic buildings in Dripping Springs stay in the condition that they should be in. You can't buy a historic building and then renovate it into something new and modern. You can upgrade it, but you can't just completely do away with it. So he sits on the Historic Preservation Commission, which I sit on.
And he's also
an advisor on that commission. Conservation
Planning and Development, and continuing to teach.
Yep, he's a teacher at UT. So super interesting guy. Really some
I'm excited.
Neat stories.
I've never met him.
He's a great guy. You're going to really love to meet him. I was, in preparation for this, I did a little research on.
You prep for this? I just wing it.
You just wing it. Yeah, you did 30 seconds of research. There are in the state of Texas. There's an atlas of historical properties that the Texas Historical Commission put together. 300,000 sites have been identified as historical properties in Texas. 300,000.
Oh,
I thought a lot of history in this state.
Well, yeah, we do because we're the best state.
We are the best state. But the Texas Historical Commission has a really great website. I spent a little time there yesterday, and you can find out history about the Texas Revolution, historic homes around Texas, the Chisholm Trail. There's Hispanic history, Black history. There's all kinds of links to that. That's a great website to go to if you have any interest. And the Historic Preservation Commission is always looking for new commissioners. So if you want to get involved in preserving the history of Dripping Springs, contact the city.
That is what's nice about Texas is that we just have a very diverse landscape and people.
We really do.
But we have one temperature. It's hot. It's hot.
But do you feel like it's hotter than it's been? Historically.
I am older than I've ever been.
Wow, that does change.
In light of that, I am just older. I have developed a real affinity to air conditioning, whether it's in my car, whether it's at my house.
Could you imagine living here in Texas 150 years ago?
No, would not survive.
I was looking at a story, and in 1923. There were 16 days over 100 degrees. But then in 1951, we broke a record for the number of 100-degree days. So all these people that are out there saying, oh, it's hotter than it's ever been, global warming, blah, 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 blah. It's not. It's actually, this is typical summer in Texas.
It is. And, I think Monday of next week, by the time this comes out, I think our 100-degree is breaking because I was looking at the weather.
It's 99?
It's in the 90s. So it's breaking, and then I don't see any 100-degree after that.
It is pretty funny to think. It's all relative, right? We were running last week, and it was 83 degrees, and I was like, I can't wait until it's 79, which is still freaking hot to run. But
no, it's gross.
Yeah.
And, I like to sleep with the temperature.
I know, you said 69 degrees.
68, 69. I have the ceiling fan on, and I also have another fan.
4 blankets and a ceiling fan.
I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, here's a couple stats for you. So people that are saying, oh, man, this global warming, we've got all these 100-degree days. Right now, the National Weather Service, Texas has had 43 100-degree days this year.
I thought we broke it.
No, we broke the longest consecutive streak of 100-degree days,
Okay.
which we have done.
Okay.
But the National Weather Service is expecting 6,500-degree days. Do you know how many we had?
6,500 degrees?
Yeah, no, 65 100-degree days.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it
Commas
feels
matter.
like that outside. It's 6,500 degrees right now.
That is how it feels like right now.
Do you remember how many 100-degree days we had in 2011? 12 years ago?
But you know what? I just jogged a memory. I remember being in the valley, Westlaco, Texas, sitting in my little elementary school classroom, no air conditioning.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let us wear shorts because that was inappropriate. Oh. And gnats flying all around and just the windows open. So I don't know how I survived.
Well, you were 12 years old. That always helps.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah. But do you remember how many?
No, a lot.
It was 2011. That was the worst one I can remember of the 20 years I've been here. We had 87 100-degree days.
Ugh, that was before we had a pool.
Yeah.
First world problems.
So it is pretty funny. It seems like we do this every year. We're like, oh, it's so hot, climate change, global warming, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually...
you just said blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Twice in one podcast.
But this is normal. This is Texas weather.
Well, I think it's going to weed out the people that think they want to move to Texas because the last couple of summers have been pretty mild.
Can you imagine moving here in January from, San Francisco?
Yeah.
And walking outside right now?
Speaking of, I'm going to San Francisco next week. And I said, Tate, what should I bring? And he goes, bring a jacket and jeans. And I'm like, just dying. I'm like,
oh, I love it.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. But yeah.
Well, part of this heat wave thing that's going on, people are actually changing their lifestyles right now. I'm a trendsetter, I found out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, tell me, Steve. Yeah, how's that?
People are getting up really early to go to work. Construction workers are starting at 4 a.m. now instead of 6 or 6:30 to beat the heat. People are working out in the middle of the night, taking their dogs for walks at 11 a.m. or 4 a.m. People are going grocery shopping late at night or early in the morning to avoid the heat.
People are watering their lawn at 9 p.m. so the neighbors don't give them crazy,
or
creepy eyes.
Midnight so nobody sees them. But there is sort of a trend, and it's actually pretty smart. We've been doing that for years. We work out in the morning to avoid the heat of the day. But now people are starting to do it, and I've noticed it driving into Austin. Like on Saturday morning, we drive in at 4:30. There's traffic on the road now at 4:30, and when we get to Barton Springs parking lot at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's full.
So you know how I avoid the heat? I just avoid working out.
Well, that works for you.
That's how I do it.
Might have to change, though.
Why? Why? There's sweating involved.
Yeah, the older you get, you're supposed to stay active.
I am. I'm very active. I walk to the printer and back.
Actually, and staging houses that you do. I mean, I watch you sometimes. That's hard work.
I am very active, and therefore I pull my sciatica out a lot because I don't thoughtfully bend correctly.
No, you don't. You don't put any thought into it.
Dr. Kyle gets mad at me because he tells me that I don't do things correctly.
Well,
but
you
that's
don't.
okay. I don't.
You don't think about it, which you got to start doing that because you're getting to that age.
Almost your age?
Almost mine now. I'll always be ahead of you, though.
Hey, this is something that happened last year, June of last year to be exact, but the current administration did away with federal funding that is going to archery and hunting programs within the school. Yeah, and it was kind of weird. It was kind of all over the place when I was trying to do research about this. But Congress passed this Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's BSCA in an effort to promote safer and more inclusive and positive schools. I think this was in response to all the school shootings that have kind of happened, and it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. So there's also another organization called the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. It prohibits uses of federal funds for programs to include archery and hunting. Nearly 1.3 million students from 9,000 schools across 49 states have these programs, and mainly it's archery. But in some other districts or schools, they promote safe hunting practices. If you think of Alaska, they need to know.
So the schools are doing away with these programs?
This current administration has done away with this particular funding that goes to this. So schools have already canceled these types of programs, so they're looking for private donations. But most recently, about a week ago, a representative from Tennessee has introduced legislation that would protect this federal funding. And so I kind of just, that just kind of like the little Cliff Notes version of it. But, you look at somebody like Dripping Springs High School. We really were a rural town at one time, and people talk about, when I went to school, we had shotguns in our back. We just didn't drive around with shotguns in the back of your truck just for the heck of it,
some
right?
Did. Some did.
Some of them.
Yeah, but usually
did.
They were going hunting birds or something after school.
Well, yeah, but I just think it's very interesting to me that you would do away with federal programs about living off of the land. And how to protect yourself.
It's a sport. I mean, it's a sport. And
can we do away with women's soccer? Because no, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, it will do away with itself if you keep letting men play in the women's.
That's true.
It's a sport, and it can be used for dangerous means, but. Have you heard any stories about people being shot with bows and arrows? Well, I don't understand to make it more inclusive in schools. That makes no sense to me.
I don't get it. It's some bureaucrat that just kind of arbitrarily made this stupid law that lives in, I saw one quote says these people that are making these laws spend most of their day in air conditioning in these buildings and have no idea. They're out of touch with the real communities of the United States.
So this same organization or same bureaucrat that says, no, we shouldn't teach kids about archery because it could make the schools dangerous would not say the same thing about condoms.
Oh, ooh.
Right?
Oh, does it? I didn't know we were going there, but that's true.
You get my point. It's like, so you're just going to say that, hey, we're not even going to pay attention to that? Well, what would be the problem with teaching kids? And I don't even go say handguns. I mean, teaching kids proper usage of these tools, which can be used for sport.
I don't know. Could it be the same argument for a tuba? How is learning the tuba gonna enrich someone's?
Well, yeah.
I mean, if the grid goes down, am I gonna? I don't know. Play my tuba to get food.
Well, when you and I were kids in school, home ec. They don't have home ec anymore. Yeah. They're teaching them a lot.
That's sexist. Why would you take home ec?
I took home ec. I took home ec to learn how to iron and how to bake a cake.
Well, how'd that work?
And meet chicks.
That's in the end. That's the story of Steve's life.
But they're focusing on a lot of stuff. They teach the kids a lot of things, yes, and they can use those things to go to college and get better grades in college. But there are some things kids should come out as. You should know how to balance a checkbook, a checking account. I guess nobody has a checkbook anymore, but you should know how a credit card works and what you end up paying. I remember my I think it was Econ 101 teacher saying that $199 VCR, that dates me, but that $199 VCR, if you buy that on a credit card and you pay the minimum payment every month, by the time you're finished paying on it, it'll be like $570. And for me, that's been a lifelong lesson. Like I try to avoid paying for stuff that's kind of fun with a credit card, and so they need to teach some of these kids these things so they go out in the world prepared to succeed.
Yeah, this was more of a talking point that I just kind of brought up. I didn't have like an in-game, with it. I just think it's bizarre that they are trying to take away programs that are teaching our children how to live off the land. That was the biggest thing I kind of got. And I didn't really read anything about besides the inclusivity and, here's my blah, blah, blah. I don't understand. Back in the day, when my kids were little, they would run around in the back of our house with airsoft guns, shooting themselves or whatever.
Actually, Logan and Colton, they used to come over to our property, and I would chase them around with an airsoft gun.
Parenting 101 with Michelle and Steve.
Yeah. But you know what? Our Colton and Logan both will say those were really fun times. I'll say they were really fun times.
And they're responsible young men now.
Well, and I made them wear eye safety, and there's some lessons to be learned. Like I taught my kids when they were super little how to shoot a BB gun. And I treated those BB guns like they were loaded 45s, they all the proper protection. I even made them wear ear muffs and things. Just, that was the whole experience of being around a gun. They didn't know that we were just going to shoot at a can, or they did know, but I mean, it was all we're doing is shooting at a can.
You're going to shoot your eye out.
Yeah. But it's, there's lessons there. And
absolutely.
I don't think you can, just ignore those things. So, hey, we found out a while ago, because he's been a client of ours.
And a friend.
And a friend. But Ron Hood is retiring from Constable of Precinct 4.
Good as gold human being.
Super, super great guy. I really like him a lot.
He is just an amazing person. I think he's been a gift for Dripping Springs.
Him and his wife, Kathy, are fantastic people, and I think they're going to move away, and they're going to be really missed.
I think so also.
Yeah.
But we have somebody that's going to be running for his position for Precinct 4 Constable, Ben Gieselman. I can kind of just read the press release that they did. Ben Gieselman, born and raised in Dripping Springs, announced his campaign for Hays County Constable Precinct 4. Currently, Ben is a detective with the Hays County Sheriff's Office. So he's a hometown boy.
Yeah.
He served in the Marines. I think he has 4 little kids, or has it 4 little kids? I would love to get him in and visit with him.
Yeah, I'd like to have him come and visit with us on the show and find out why he wants to be the Precinct 4 Constable. And I'll tell you, he's got big shoes to fill.
Well, he already has a very strong endorsement right now by Anthony Hippolito, who's running for Hays County Sheriff.
Yep.
And so I would love to be able to get him in here and just kind of see where he stands. He has a very strong police background. He was patrol duty, patrol corporal, criminal investigations, a detective, field training officer, mobile field force commander, peer support, firearms and general training instructor, et cetera, et cetera. So his resume looks very impressive.
Yeah.
So
and graduated from Dripping Schools and Texas State. So Hays County guy through and through. So wish him the best of luck. So
I think that I have to end our little monologue here on kind of a sad note. Speaking of a Dripping Springs resident, Hailey Hodsden. Yeah. Hailey Hodsden was 24 years old. She is a graduate of Dripping Springs High School. She was really a standout soccer star, and she was a record breaker in track. And unfortunately, Hailey passed away August 1st.
Oh my gosh.
She was killed in a accident in Germany when the striker that she was in was traveling and collided with a semi when it merged onto the Autobahn.
Oh my gosh.
She leaves behind a very impressive background for someone that's only 21 years of age. She graduated from West Point, as did her brother, and her parents did as well. So she comes from a long history of West Point grads. I think one of her grandfathers as well.
I think we've had quite a few kids go from Dripping Springs into the elite military academies.
I mean, all of her siblings, they're very standout athletes, just wonderful people. Luke wrestled with her brother, her older brother Luke, wrestled with Tate.
Oh, okay.
And he was a state champ, and he was one of the captains with Tate of the wrestling team. But I thought I would end this with reading her obituary. I think it's just, life is precious, and for this beautiful 24-year-old, her precious life was cut so short. I think it's an honor for me to be able to read this.
Yeah.
Hailey Elizabeth Hodsden, 24, of Dripping Springs, Texas, died on August 1st, 2023 in a training accident in Germany while serving as scout platoon leader in the 2nd U.S. Cavalry Regiment. Hailey was born on July 15th, 1999 in Austin, Texas. Hailey was a 2017 graduate of Dripping Springs High School and a 2021 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point in New York. Hailey loved everybody without condition. She especially loved God, her family, and her boyfriend, First Lieutenant Matthew Delaney, the Army, and her many close friends. She was as good as an officer as there was in the Army, professional, proficient, and personable. She was not only cared for the people she served with, but she loved them. She also loved life and all of its facets: books, art, sports, travel, history, nature, and music. She put effort into living life and experiencing all of the beauty that life has to offer. She would find good in the worst situation. Hailey was a faithful Catholic and was confident where she would be spending eternity. Hailey is survived by her parents, Scott and Julie Hodson, her siblings, Luke, Max, Jenna, Taylor, Eleanor, Ellie, and Nicholas. She is also survived by her paternal grandfather, Thomas Hodson, and her nephew, Mark, and many aunts and uncles and cousins who loved her. Hailey is predeceased by her maternal grandparents, Colonel retired Donald and Patricia Hybert, and her paternal grandmother, Eleanor Hodson. A funeral mass will be celebrated at St. Martin de Porres Catholic Church in Dripping Springs, followed by interment in the cemetery at West Point, New York. The dates are TBD. And the family is asking to plant trees in her memory. Wow. So we lost a great citizen of the world, and especially one of our own Dripping Springs.
Someone with a servant heart. I know she's going to be missed, and we wish peace to her family.
Absolutely. And Todd and I just want to publicly say that to Scott and Julie, our hearts are just totally with you.
Yeah. Oh. Well, let's take a little break and get Keenan in here.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Mallett Integrity Team of real estate professionals. They are based in Dripping Springs and bring you over 45 years of combined experience helping people reach their hill country real estate dreams. When you want the best in town, call them at 512-829-2062 or look them up at mallettintegrityteam.com. And now, here's Steve and Michelle.
All right, we're back with Keenan Smith. Welcome to the show, Keenan.
Thank you.
You're a very interesting guy. I've known you just for a couple of years, but every time I talk to you, you tell me something more interesting than the last time I talked to you.
Well, that's cool.
Well, tell us when you moved to Dripping Springs.
I moved to Dripping Springs in the year 2000 when we designed and built a house for my family. So, that's sort of one of those hooks for the architect.
Is it?
Design and build a house for your family in the West Cave Estates neighborhood. So,
and you've been there ever since?
Yep.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the milk cow country of upstate New York.
Oh, geez, that's a long way from Texas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what brought you here originally?
Originally, a woman.
That happens.
Not my wife. So,
okay. Well,
right. So someday it'll be a country western song if it's not already.
I'm sure there's plenty like that.
Involves broken down pickup trucks and
and a train ride
Steve just
Let's
said
get the mic a little closer.
Steve just said that he was in home ec so he could meet girls. So
you probably were too, right?
No, my mom made me take typing.
Oh, typing. Yeah, I took that too.
But that was actually pretty good because who knew the keyboard era was,
The keyboard era stayed,
right?
Yes, for sure. But I can iron my own shirts now, so that's a big plus.
And you can type with 2 fingers.
I do. I type with 2
fingers. And I must say your shirt does look good today.
You see, it's ironed.
Oh, it's blue. Yeah. Oh, look, he's wearing a blue shirt.
So, have you always had a love of architecture and design?
I think I came to architecture sort of by rationale more than love. I mean, I always had a creative side. I was drawing stuff since I was 4 or 5. Still have some of those sketches and cartoons. Really? Yeah. But I really came up through, the rational side, which is, fixing things and engineering. And my first job was on a dairy farm in upstate New York.
Really?
as an ag mechanic, tearing down stripping John Deeres. And,
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's a long way from architecture, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I came up through the technical world, and then a part of me wasn't being sort of satisfied that whole creative side of the brain. And then I've kind of figured that out in the second year of college when I ran up against, engineering school and differential equations and hardcore physics and all that stuff. And,
went off in the architecture direction.
Yeah.
Right?
You needed an outlet. So what were some of the other things that you liked to do when you were a kid besides hang out at the dairy farm?
Well, I got into motorcycling, a dirt bike. I'm a lifelong motorcyclist.
Wow.
And so, motorcycling, dirt bikes through the woods, that kind of stuff at an early age. Building my own mini bike and, go-karts.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I knew you were into motorcycles now, but I didn't know that was a lifelong thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
You
cool.
asked him if he drove his motorcycle here.
I did.
Too.
Well, I know this from your bio, but you and I have also talked about it. You did a motorcycle trip. Was it 2 years ago or last year?
Summer of 22, I did what I called the if not now, when
I
trip.
saw that.
Yeah.
6,581 miles, 18 states, U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, but who's counting, right?
Well, I mean, how many bugs did you eat?
No. Did you do that? Did you lay it all out? Like, I'm going to go from here to here and they're staying in that hotel. And then
it's kind of funny. I RSVP'd to my 50-year high school reunion in upstate New York. Actually, it was 50 plus one because COVID ate their homework.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to ride to upstate New York. And then I'm like, okay, well, I want to get fitted for this custom motorcycle suit in Duluth because, I'm 2 meters tall and nothing fits off the rack. So I'm
2 meters is what, 6'8"? 6'4",
6.5.
6.5.
Yeah,
you are. You're very tall.
The saucy way of saying 6'6". And then, I'm going from Austin to Duluth to get fitted. And then I'm like, well, I always wanted to go around all 5 Great Lakes. If not now, when? So I just kept going, and I did a circumnavigation of all 5 Great Lakes and collected little water samples.
You did the Forrest Gump of 50th high school reunion trips, maybe. You just kept going.
Went to the reunion, and then a buddy of mine in upstate New York, my lifelong buddy, rode with me all the way down the eastern seaboard, Blue Ridge Parkway, to a great motorcycle museum in Birmingham, Alabama, called the Barber Motorcycle Museum. And then we parted ways, and I crossed the deep south coming home in the end of July. Yeah.
Did you have any scary kind of moments?
Well, a few, but I mean, we won't dwell on those. Here I am.
Yeah, here you are.
And you're riding is it BMW?
No, it's not a Harley, not a BMW, not even a Honda. It's a Suzuki V-Strom DL1000.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
100 horsepower, plenty,
Oh, yeah. Jeez,
a tall man's bike.
That'll get you there, yeah. So you just blew on by the water samples at all the lakes. What was that about?
Well, it has to do with the story of the red bike that I rode. It was purchased by one of our motorcycle buddies from upstate New York, lived in Philly, and in 2014, he contracted cancer. Oh. And one thing led to another, and he was also tall. And towards the end, he said, "You know what, Keenan, I'm not going to be able to ride again, and this bike is perfect for you. Oh. You need this bike." And so one thing led to another, and I got Jimmy's bike.
Wow!
And he said, "Promise me one thing, that you'll ride this to the 4 corners and ride like the wind." Oh! So part of the if not now when was I collected. Look at this what's that little fireball? You know what fireball?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I had to ask my son what it was. I strapped 5 fireball bottles and put them in the panniers. And when I put my boots in every lake, I would reach down and collect water from each of the Great Lakes. Wow. And when his ashes are actually buried on my buddy's farm in upstate New York. And so when I got there, I parked the bike over where his ashes were spread in a hayfield and dumped the water of the 5 Great Lakes over the windshield. Cool, kind of like maybe sappy, but kind of.
I think that's cool. I think that's great. You're honoring somebody that you had a special relationship with, and still feeling connected to him, even though he's passed away and gone.
So just one footnote on the trip was that, what you said, how did I map it out? Well, I knew I was going to go to the reunion, and I knew I wanted to do these other things. And so I just took my phone and kind of unloaded all my contacts and sprinkled them on a map. You remember maps? Actual maps?
I do. I still travel with them.
And I put dots where all my contacts were, and I just took a chalk and kind of chalked out this rough line from here to there, but hitting all these people. In the end, the takeaway of the trip was, I thought it was going to be about the ride or, the scenery, whatever. It was really about the people. And of course, if you're more socially adept than me, you know that instantly. But, the takeaway was all the people, those precious people that I hadn't seen for 1, 5, 10, 20, or 50 years.
Wow.
And
I connected with some of my family that I hadn't seen just recently since the 70s, and it's special to do that. It's special. And
just making the effort, And so that was the if not now when trip of 22.
Sure.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
And so how long have you been with the city of Dripping Springs? Because the things I have are you're a consultant on the Historic Preservation Commission, which you and I do that together. You do all the exterior design reviews, which is a lot.
Right.
And then the TERS project manager.
Yeah, that's right.
And TERS is
Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone.
Yeah.
It's not scary.
You said that like those movies we used to watch in 5th grade. Tax increment. Now, you were very instrumental in getting the old Fitzhugh project moving forward.
That's one of the TERS projects that I am trying to be, steward and push forward.
Yeah, that's a great project. We've talked about it before on the show. It's going to be real exciting when that's done.
It's just a tool that the cities like Dripping that are in a path of growth, which is the fundamental thing about Dripping.
Yeah.
Did you know it was in the path of a tsunami of growth?
Well, if you better know it now. You may not have known it 10 years ago, but you know it now.
What can cities use to, respond to growth in a way that builds civic infrastructure and public projects that help, maintain a sense of place and build economic development in these zones? So that's the short thing about TERS. It doesn't tax you any further. It's just capitalizes on the tax that was already going to come as a result of growth and shunts part of it over to this fund that can be used to do more good for the city.
That's cool. That's great.
Speaking of growth, so much is said here in Dripping Springs about responsible growth. And I feel like a lot of residents that it has been just the opposite, some irresponsible growth that has happened here in Dripping Springs. And with the water issues, the traffic, the school overcrowding. So what is our role as citizens to try to help that and help the people that are consulting or working for the city of Dripping to try to foster more responsible growth here?
Well, just to be, it's a tough one. Growth
is inevitable.
Planning in Texas, and I teach city and regional planning. So it's a tough deal in Texas because of the tools that cities have, or more frankly, what they don't have, to ability to control is the wrong word, but shape growth in the right way. So as far as citizens, I would just say when opportunities come up, like, for example, we're going through a comprehensive plan update right now, just, got to turn out for those events and be vocal and articulate about the kind of future, the vision for the future that you see, and let those teams and let those, the city people and elected officials know what kind of future you envision.
Or we expect.
Yeah, there is a lot of, I bet you can speak to this, Keenan. There's a lot of hindsight stuff that people do. So something that's been in the process for 2 years happens, and then people go, well, that's a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. Well, where were you in the whole? And I'll give you an example. That TERS project, the city did that thing for Old Fitzhugh, and they had that gigantic map out there, and all the landscape architects and the you were there. There was a whole group of people, and they were eager to hear people's feedback on what they thought of the plan, weren't they?
Sure. I mean, that was what that open house was all about.
Yeah. And so, people will complain once something isn't what they wanted, but they could have had input if they had paid attention early on. So on the Historic Preservation Commission, when somebody brings a project, I don't even feel like that's work for you, Keenan. You seem to love reviewing those, and then you give us recommendations on what you think should happen and what the city should do. So you really enjoy that, don't you?
Well, I do and I don't. I mean, I grew up in an area that is just surrounded by historic architecture in upstate New York. And I mean, everything from Federalist stuff from 1810 through the revivals of the 19th century to the achingly beautiful Craftsman style stuff in my hometown. And all of that. So I have an abiding affection for historic preservation. And I think somewhere in my resume, I am a certified historic preservation architect. Meeting those criteria. So, I love that stuff, and I love seeing new and old, come together with grace and skill. And I think that's what it's all about. It's a balancing act. So much of what Dripping, it's an authentic place. It has some real stuff. It has a scattering of, it has a real downtown, which sort of got spared by 290.
Sure.
But, there's some authenticity, some real sense of place there that we can build on, new and old coming together. So that's kind of my motivation for doing it. Now, the design review part of it is hard for a practitioner. It's like, you are not designing it, you are responding and commenting and recommending about. You're not the author of it. You're reviewing and
That's
approving.
Sort of a fine line sometimes too, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one that pops into my mind is the short-term rental on Mercer Street, where they asked to do the
fencing,
the wire fence. But that was all. We all figured out how to, they figured out how to get that, and it was resolved really nicely to everybody's satisfaction.
I want to know when the criteria here in Dripping Springs per se is like, when is a historic building just deemed too far gone to save or restore?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, that's also very tricky. I mean, there's, and we've had cases where applicants would come and argue that, this is gone, you can't save it, we ought to demo it. So actually if you look at historic preservation, the practice of it in any place that matters, including Dripping, demolition is a key issue, whether demo should be allowed. And for the most part, I try to start early with applicants and just, feel them out. I say, hey, do you know, this piece of property has a contributing.
What are those factors though? So I guess we should start from the very beginning is what are the factors that deem something historic here in Dripping Springs?
Well, in Dripping Springs, it refers to the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines on historic preservation. So there's some stuff out there that helps you understand what the key principles are. Does it contribute? Does it have a distinguished architectural character? If it's a building, does it was it part of its history? Think of, if you look at Mercer Street, like think of all the stonework that are in all those little buildings. Those characteristics are part of what give it character and contribute to a sense of place in Dripping Springs. And those kinds of things are one part of what makes it historic.
And is there like an age limit that also is a component of that? Does it have to be over 100 or?
Yeah, it's not like intellectually, 50 years, but there is a period of significance. So what period of significance means, like when was it built and how did that date, contribute to Dripping's history? For example, Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, that was restored to the period of significance when George Washington lived there. And I don't know if you know about Mount Vernon, but
I've been there.
Okay, yeah. Well, it got, it hung around and got added onto more and more and more and got sort of altered. And so when they restored it, with like many of these places, they brought it back to the period of significance. So that's kind of key.
Is that
if I start to lecture, just give me the
No. I like that. I like that. Yeah.
So is that something that
and I think we went through this with the commission, Steve, a couple of months ago. People they're more versed in historic pres than me, actual consultants that kind of can look at buildings and a whole district and assess, okay, this one, has been really altered, so it doesn't contribute as much. This one's, this was the old telephone exchange, So it's not just architecture. It could be like so-and-so lived here, Dr. Pound lived here.
Yeah.
So, the Pound House is an example of a historic landmark that has significance not only because of its architecture, because it's rather sort of early on, right?
Yeah.
But because that founder lived in that house and practiced the first medicine, that attaches significance to it.
Yeah. You said something at one of the meetings, and it was sort of an aha moment for me. It's like time is marching on, and something that may not have had any historical significance 30 years ago.
That's right.
Today, we could say, oh, that has a historical significance, where at the time back then it didn't.
Well,
so that's interesting.
So the 50 years is not a hard and fast thing, but I think it's probably more generational, like how many generations.
Yeah.
Because look now that, mid-century modern, okay, how cool is that? Well, it didn't used to be cool. It used to be like people's
homes,
Leave It to Beaver homes.
Yeah.
And now, since time has marched on, the focal length of our memory is now extended and takes in. So now, mid-century modern is historic.
That's right.
Because it's cool and it's cool. And millennials and others are going into these and they're like, we love this. And they're embracing that. So
yeah, I know. I think that's really cool.
I think I
think the fact that it's always changing. We always think of these things as sort of points in time, and it doesn't change, but as history marches on, more and more things become historically
and why it's important to have kind of a committee like that too, because it's not like one particular set of guidelines or rules.
Actually, I'd like to put a finer point on that. I mean, I've sort of gently told the commission a couple of times that just because these consultants said these are high priority properties and these are low, over time, or things can change, and you actually are vested. That commission is vested with the authority to change designations.
Right.
So basically,
is a big position. I mean,
50 years, Belterra could have some historic.
It could actually. I mean,
in
50 years, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's right. And what I would say just about your work, and I'm so proud of the work. I think the Historic Preservation Commissions is actually one of the most important commissions in the city. I've said this before with no real basis except personal. You're charged with the stewardship of the original sense of place, and a place is only original once. And if something gets badly altered or remodeled beyond recognition, or God forbid torn down, then you've lost it.
Yeah. So, and forever. You can't get it back.
And there's not that much in Dripping. I mean, if you look at Dripping, it's not like Fredericksburg where there's a freaking wall of historic buildings
and
that is solid, sense physically of history. You just have sort of scattered buildings along a main street and a couple of others that contribute to adding up to what the historic sense of place was for Dripping.
Right. I know navigating some of somebody that either inherits or buys a historical property, navigating some of the rules for, if a building's starting to fall down or needs in need of repair, do you feel like there are some things that you wish everybody knew about starting that process coming into the city and saying, I inherited my mom's house over here off of Hayes Street or whatever, and it's historical, and I want to fix it up, put a new roof on it. What do you wish people knew about before they started that process.
Well, I wish they knew that they could come and talk, before anything ever gets done, and just sort of talk about the issues and
doesn't have to be real formal. They can come in and sit down and say.
In fact, that's an incentive. The city, I've always maintained a consulting basis with the city. I resisted becoming an employee, but my time, for those what we call scoping meetings, like just sussing it out and chatting about it, before anything ever gets imagined, it's just really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And because then we can kind of walk through how much this property contributes or in fact doesn't, or what degrees of freedom are available. Because it's, like I say, it's all about bringing in this new vitality into the historic districts and mixing it with the old. So
that's right.
What are the parameters? So, I mean, does it just stick to the confines of the outside design, or are you getting into the nitty gritty of you can only put this type of countertop and toilet or whatever?
No, we're not getting into grab bars and hinges. We're honestly, it's really the exterior affect. How the building,
aesthetically looks.
Aesthetics, and it even contributes. Like on Mercer Street, it's the pedestrian realm that we're trying to, if you do things with those buildings that helps promote the pedestrian activity on Mercer Street, it's tied to a set of visions and goals that we kind of helped write back during, remember the moratorium of 2015?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was like a catharsis moment. And, the historic district had already was in place for a long while, but we said, hey, we might have two more districts. We might have Old Fitzhugh Road District and Hayes Street. Those are really different than Mercer Street. And what are their, fundamental characteristics, and what are the things that make it good and important, and how do we envision those districts growing? So we wrote vision statements, and they're bound into the ordinance.
Yeah.
You can read them. And then the design guidelines for each district fell right out of those, those principles.
Yeah.
So how many districts are there?
There's three.
Three. So Hayes, Fitzhugh, and Mercer.
Mercer was the first one, 2006 or 7.
And they each have their own kind of guidelines of obviously Mercer pedestrian, right? Fitzhugh is kind of becoming more of a mixed use, and then Hayes residential.
Yeah, I mean Hayes was one of those. It was an actual neighborhood that was part of the original fabric, the original grid of Dripping Springs that got cut off when US 290 was ramrodded, through in 1959 and 1960.
I showed it.
There's
to
a
you.
legend. Yeah. There's an LBJ legend about that, but I don't know.
I know. I've heard that.
Oh, wait, I haven't heard it.
He needed a highway to his ranch out in Johnson City.
Oh, really?
So,
is that the?
So
when he was getting, irritated by having to go down Mercer Street and across the quote rickety bridge, which is the Dripping Springs branch, which gives the town its name. And the 1960 Lincoln, couldn't open up, so. The legend it goes, and I can be given the hook at any time is that the LBJ helped get US 290 built. They basically took half a block from Spring Street north. Now Spring Street no longer exists, but except for the tarvia in front of Time and Doe and what's now Pigpen.
So
Tarvia, that little, you mean
that little
that little aisle is the remains of Spring Street.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
Oh.
Yeah. So in the original grid of Dripping Springs, that was Spring Street.
Yeah.
And there was a whole block.
There was a whole other houses that were demolished or obviously.
I don't know how many eggs were broken to make the omelet, but essentially from Time and Doe right across to Short Mama's.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's
I was going to say I saw.
That's why the central garage and the Shell station, they're all on little, sliver lots.
Right.
The remains of what happened.
What was there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've showed it to you. I saw one of the original plats from downtown.
I have it.
You have it, yeah. It shows Spring Street there, and it has, remember you and I looked at it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
You need to put it on our website.
1870 or something.
Or on Instagram or something. You need to put it up there.
Yeah.
So
W.T. Chapman drew it with a quill pen.
Yeah.
Probably sitting in his study, which was that house right across from City Hall.
Yeah.
But I digress. I mean, Hayes was a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it got severed from the rest of its corpus or body. Right. And so its principles are all about neighborhood preservation and those kinds of things.
And this all happened what year did you say?
Well, there was a moratorium in 2015.
No. But when the Spring Street, when of that
was the 60s, right? When 290 came
59
through.
or 60. If you look at the black and white aerial photos.
Oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be very interesting to
But then
see that.
LBJ
could just
zoom.
Get off at the SAC base at Bergstrom, which is
be
that
at his ranch in 30 minutes.
It was a SAC base, right?
Yeah,
and
I did.
The Hilton, the bottom of the Hilton was, the war room with the with
I
the
didn't
maps
know that.
and the little sticks to push the things around, the maps of the world.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so the Hilton, that's that round drum. So that was actually an act of historic preservation, adaptive reuse, honestly. And one of my colleagues, Gerard Kinney, was instrumental in saving that and adaptively reusing that because that was a SAC base.
Yeah.
What is a SAC base?
Okay, Strategic Air Command.
Strategic
That's
Air
where
Command.
You have to salute when you say that.
Okay.
That's where they send the B-1 bombers and the nuclear missiles.
Well,
from.
when he was saying he was using the motion SAC base, I'm imagining people shoveling sand into sacks.
No, it was like, okay, you remember, Michelle, you remember the movies like, where all the generals are like standing around, just sort of map of the world and,
moving the ships with the sticks and all that.
Yeah.
That was down there.
Interesting.
So it was
That's
the Cold
cool.
War. It was the Cold War, and B-52s, honest to God, went out of Bergstrom.
That's crazy.
And so it was that asset, those 5,000 plus whatever foot long runways, that was an act of historic preservation. Sort of an asset that when that base closed, the city said, hey, we'll do that deal because our little airport is.
Oh,
yeah.
And look how Mueller turned out.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
So that was actually a triumph of, well, this is my opinion, triumph of, urban planning. Adaptive reuse.
That actually a good segue. You in your bio, you talked about placemaking, and tell me what that is.
Well, okay, it's a slippery term, I admit. The Romans called it genus loci, which is literally the genius of place, and it sort of means like what's important and memorable about a place. So. When I teach design for planners at UT, and the first project I give them is called the Sense of Place project. And I ask them on day one to think of some memorable experience that happened to them in their young lives that changed them or, struck them. And I asked them to think about the space in which that event occurred. And I asked them to then, do an illustration like a poster that explains the relationship between how that space, embodied that memory.
Wow.
And so I know that's kind of loaded and abstract and all academic.
So how do you apply that into planning a neighborhood or planning a development? So
the reason I do that in the first exercise is so in the end, when they get to, I assign them a site to play with is the wrong word, study, some ragtag parking lot within walking distance of Sutton Hall or, a fast food joint and, imagine a future for it. Then when they get to operate on it and propose visions for the futures of these places, I ask them then to hearken back and say, did you make this something that might be someone else's future sense of place project.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So I'm doing nothing to explain to you what sense of place means, but
I get it though.
But every place that you visit, on vacation or traveling or whatever, even places that you live, embody a sense of place. And sometimes it's good and sometimes you have it's negative, but Dripping Springs has a sense of place.
Oh, it does. Definitely
and
does.
so I think the charge that I've been working on all these years in trying to help with is how to maintain that sense of place and how to help it evolve into the next, because it's going to change, with the growth. How do you preserve what's important to preserve, and how do you welcome and invite in and carefully integrate the new vitality that you need, every city needs to grow and sustain itself.
That's actually one of the things I think you're really good at, is because sometimes people probably come into the city and they have this idea about what they want to do with the building, and it doesn't fit anything along the lines of what the city wants and the historic pres or anybody else. And navigating that, and you always do that. You always have a smile on your face, and you keep it. You keep it from people from getting real upset in a situation where they could. Do you like dealing with those kind of things?
I guess what I would say is that, honestly, if you don't, it doesn't take long driving around Dripping Springs. I mean, did you know that the road from LA to Austin leads through Dripping Springs? And so some of them stop here, and they get it. That sense of place, whatever it is, and it's unique to whatever place you're in. You drive down Mercer Street and you sort of get, this is something, there's something
It feels
here.
historical, yeah.
Well, I have to say that we brought our family here from South Austin. So we've lived in the Austin area for 25 years. We've lived in Dripping 18 years.
Sure.
And I live, when we first moved here, I always kind of felt we live in the newer part of Dripping Springs. We're so new, we're Austin, and people don't understand that as well. But I always kind of felt that we were two different parts of the same animal. Now with the Belterra Shopping Center and all of the growth that's going on there, that I really feel like there's really a divide. And then in between these two areas of Dripping Springs, there's nothing that kind of brings us together. Well, that is because I drive that road every single day.
What do you think about that?
No, that's 100%, because in 2018, I taught a design studio at the school, and I turned them loose on Dripping Springs. And I said, okay, if the tourists came to you or whatever, and said, what's our next project? But the first thing they did, I brought them out here, and I asked them to sort of do an illustration of what the character Dripping Springs, and about 5 of them came up with a tale of two cities. There's the core, the historic core, the downtown, the historic districts, and then there's
the new people.
And so that is the tale. That is the tale of Dripping, and that is the challenge: is how to, provide an inclusive sense of belonging between the people that just got here, or, and there's a ton of them, right?
Yeah.
But they identify with both. This is our home, and this is where we put down roots. Mm-hmm. And this is cool, and hopefully cooler sooner and over time.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Right? No, I mean that's what we're working on.
Oh, I know.
I am fortunate enough that I live there, but I work here. So I feel like there are people in my neighborhood in that they never come into Dripping, especially now that we have an HEB over there, which is hallelujah. And I think that HEB did a really wonderful job with kind of preserving the Nutty Brown feel and kind of what the community spoke. But I feel like there are people in my neighborhood in that area that don't really know this part of Dripping Springs.
100%. That's 100% true. I guarantee. I mean,
there are people that cruise like LBJ did, blow by on 290 and don't even know that Mercer Street is there.
Don't even think about it.
But that doesn't make it, dismissible. I mean, what we're building here, actually, the reason when 290 kind of bypassed, if you will, a road does run through it, but it doesn't run through the center of it.
Yeah.
It preserved Mercer Street for a chance to be, adaptively reused and reintegrated into the community. So my hope is that the historic districts, that's the core, and that's what's going to retain, its sense of place and character. And we're going to build on that and, preserve what's important and integrate the new stuff with it. And that'll be the focal point.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Fast Food Row out there, though? I mean, it's
Belterra?
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Because, let me be careful. Okay. It's necessary, and I guess, and it's sort of a fact of life. Strip retail and strip commercial is part of the the built fabric of the United States of America right now. And but if there's a place for it, okay, let it be there. And that was a development district, the Belterra and the Ledgestone. So the city's ordinances, you should know, don't apply to those. They have their own rules, and so that's where those things are attracted to.
Because they were only in the ETJ, right? So the city had limited impact on what could be done.
But didn't they annex those areas, though, for the...
Their annex, it's a limited purpose annexation. I'll let the city attorney explain that to you. So they agreed to come into the city's jurisdictions with certain of the regulations applicable and others not applicable.
Interesting.
But importantly, globally, the sales tax revenue comes into the city. So, it's above my pay grade, guys. So,
but it's always a give and take. I mean, the city needs money to do the projects that it needs, and then the developer needs.
So you asked about fast food and stuff. So within the city limits, some of the most challenging cases I've had as a design reviewer have been around highway-oriented, pad buildings. So I just want you to look next time, if you go out that way, look at the 7-Eleven that's just next to
Tractor
Supply, and compare it with the 7-Eleven that's on the way into Austin.
That's a good observation. I definitely will.
That's what they first brought.
Oh.
That design.
And then working with the city and you and the exterior design review came up with
and then there's McDonald's and Whataburger, though it's in a planned development district number 1, and that it's funny you should mention HEB. That's how I got involved in the city, is helping shape the exterior character of the HEB that the community really, really, really wanted and in fact needed.
It did.
The designs that they originally brought were, frankly, from Round Rock. And so it's all about fitting in.
Yeah, that's what I feel like, along with the water and the traffic and everything else, but the responsible growth, I see there's certain sections in Lakeway, for instance, where you can't distinguish between a Whataburger or a Chicken Express because the buildings have to have a specific design. And I feel like...
Well, that's easy. Orange and red.
Well, right? But when I'm driving down that way in Belterra, it's just like on that left side, or the Ledgestone, it's just flashy, flashy, flashy. And I just feel like the aesthetics of what our beautiful hill country are is just kind of lost a little bit when you're pulling
that is why the city first created its exterior design guideline. That's why they created the historic districts in 2006 or 2007, and that soon following after that, they had their little exterior design guidelines.
Maybe we still have some more work to do in the ETJ then, sounds
there's
like.
always some work to do.
The important thing is those don't apply in the ETJ.
Well,
that's right.
I'm a community member, and I say I don't like it.
You need to come down and stop griping and just tell everybody how you feel.
I don't know how we're doing here, but...
We're doing good. I got a couple more questions for you. So you're an adjunct associate professor at UT. How long have you been doing that?
At UT
or just in general? How long have you been teaching?
Well, I've been teaching... I did a little summer program at Harvard when I was there, but then... in 93
is when you started?
Yeah, my daughter was born.
30 years.
That's right.
30 years. You looked at me like, wow, yeah, that's a long time.
USC, at USC, so University of Southern California.
Have you really enjoyed that? Teaching?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's something I'm really, it'd be pat to say I'm passionate about it, but I'm really enthusiastic about it because it's sort of, it's a give back,
Yeah.
And your consulting kind of goes coast to coast all over the United States. And I saw that you were the design architect for the tsunami wall.
Tell us about that.
I didn't know. Gosh. I didn't know that California. I mean, like, is California a real threat for tsunamis?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
yes. The answer to that is yes.
It sounds like another part of the world problem, and so to kind of bring it home, that's an interesting challenge, a design challenge.
I got marooned out in Southern California for many years. I was recruited out there out of graduate school to work for a large master plan community developer out there, the Irvine Company.
Oh, geez. That's a huge company, isn't it?
Yeah, they recruited me out of graduate school. So I worked for them for 10 years, both as an employee and as a consultant, doing master plan communities. And so, that's how I got involved in doing some stuff in Orange County, California. And
what did that entail, though? It's like you were the design architect. So does that mean that you came
for this project?
For that project. Did you come up with that design?
Well, so in Huntington Beach, there's a water treatment plant. So there's no wastewater. Let's just be clear. It's just water on its way to doing the next good thing.
The next thing, yeah.
Water does. But it's right on the beach in Huntington, which is, Surf City, USA.
It is.
And so they're expanding the plant, and it's right next to this wetland and, looking out to the ocean. And they're expanding this plant, and as part of their resiliency plan. So wouldn't it be bad if the wastewater treatment plant got hit by a tsunami and got knocked out?
Well, and all that sewage got spread out over
so
all the wetlands.
So you can just imagine. So they have a resiliency plan, and it called for, as we're going to expand this plant, we're going to be mindful of the threat for tsunamis and global warming and all this stuff. And so they're like, we're going to do this perimeter wall around this plant, and it's going to be engineered for tsunamis. And it faces a wetland and some high zoot houses on the the oceanfront houses. This wall is the face of the community. This face of the plant to the community. Maybe we should get an architect involved. Who do we know that's gullible enough to?
So how did you, when you were designing this wall, what kind of stuff did you do to make that wall more appealing? It's a wall. How many different things can you play with?
It's kind of funny when they're like, well, we're going to compete. This engineering firm called me and they're like, we're going to compete for this project. Could you be the architect for this wall? And I'm thinking to myself, I could probably do that by supper time. But honestly, it took about every fiber of my being to try to, it's because it's a piece of engineering, Steve, honestly,
Sure.
And so its role is first to, withstand tremendous catastrophic forces. And then on top of that, it has to sort of look
nice.
good. Yeah.
I was trying to find a picture of it, but...
No, it's not built yet. So
okay. Well, how long ago was it that you started on this?
About 3 years, right before COVID.
Oh my goodness!
So 10 years it'll be done because it's California.
Well, it's also $500 million plant expansion. So but they're going to build it as far as I know. And
go stick your hands in it when they pour the concrete.
So I answer your question. I thought about the context of place. I thought about placemaking. Like, this wall is the face of the community. How should it respond to its place, its context? And it's Surf City. It faces the waves, and so we took the top of the wall and we made sets of waves on the top of this concrete wall, and then it faces this wetland, and so. What response is there for the creatures and plants in the wetland? And so we are actually, engraving, figures of the key animals.
The animals from the wetlands.
In
That's
the wall.
Cool. That's
and,
very cool.
And doing some other things. So,
Can you help me build a tsunami wall at my desk so Steve can't see me? Just a little
I have
wall.
to be a hell of a wall
Just a
because
little
I'm
wall.
a big tsunami.
yeah, you need a big engineering firm.
Yeah.
Do you know one?
Yeah. So Keenan, you said in your bio you're going to be getting back into private practice now.
Well, yeah, I mean, these 3 roles that I've had for the city, I've been doing exterior design review since 2006. So,
Oh boy.
I mean, the excuse is I just turned 70 on the 4th of July.
Oh,
so,
geez. Man, you're holding up well,
Happy
Keenan.
belated birthday.
Yeah.
well, thank you. Honestly,
Born
I
on
want
the 4th
to
of
be
July.
kind of, riding motorcycles more and fly fishing, which we sadly didn't get a chance to talk
I saw
about.
that you're fly
Oh,
fishing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to be doing those things more. And, when I'm doing these design reviews, I am not I have to impute, like you said, all the sort of balancing act. And I don't get to do it myself. It's so,
Right.
so you remember that side that needed to get exercise? Well, so I kind of want to get back to that.
Yeah.
And so, that was part of the goal. So, this month I've started pulling back from a couple of design review roles at the city and transitioning. They're getting some new reviewers in, and I'm going to help, coach them and mentor them.
That's pretty cool. One of my questions for you is, do you ever think you'll slow down or retire? But what you just said is pretty inspirational to
So
me.
I think the answer.
I don't think you're ever going to slow down.
No, retire is not in the lexicon.
Yeah,
Yes,
I like that.
I think didn't have a 25-year career, punching out fenders in a Ford plant. So I'm not getting worse at what I'm doing. I don't know any less. And so I think architecture and planning is just one of those professions where it's accumulative in a way. I don't know how to say this without sounding,
Professory.
yeah, I don't know. But, I think so. I'm just going to transition to practice, anybody that can.
When you say private practice, do you mean like Michelle can hire you to build her tsunami wall or to design her tsunami wall?
Well, we'd have a
tsunami wall.
conversation about that commission, but
Well, I'll take you to lunch.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to lunch.
yeah, I might be too busy for that. commission.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully you will. Well, so will you basically not be involved with the city at all at some point going forward?
Well, what I told him is I would help him with this transition so that I can kind of.
But at some point,
So 2 of the 3 roles I'm pulling back from, and
Yeah.
the project manager thing with the
TERS,
civic projects. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing that for a while, and because I think it's just too important. Like,
it is.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
and I'm going to teach too, as long as the
that's
20-somethings put up with me.
It's pretty cool because I just turned 60 this year, and there are some days that I sit at my desk and go, "I'm too old for this crap." But listening to you makes me more enthusiastic.
Another colleague of mine just turned 70. He's like, "Keenan, it's the new 50."
Yeah,
I'm like, "Don't tell me I have another 2 decades,
25 years to go." Yeah.
Right.
I think it is something special though to be teaching more young minds instead of the flashy. I guess this generation has just been shoved down their throats that new, flashy, disposable, everything is disposable nowadays. And then to be able to really take homage to the historical side and I don't know, just like reuse things that.
Honestly, I'll tell you. I mean, the students that I'm getting, they're graduate level city and regional planning students. So they're idealistic. It's incredible. The dirty secret about teaching is you get something back.
I was just going to say, you get energy from that.
Right. And so they are so hopeful and so positive about the future, more or less, that it's really cool.
I hope so, because we really have become a disposable society nowadays. And just really kind of preserving.
More so than a lot of the other places in the world, I feel like.
I mean, for instance, you wear the same blue shirt every
single day. It's a trend. I'm telling you, I'm a trendsetter. I'm like Steve Jobs. I don't have to go pick out. I just wear the same thing.
You know what? That would make more sense. That would make more sense.
Well, Keenan, I knew a little bit about you already, but just this little conversation we've had, I've learned a lot more about you. And you're a great guy, and I'm fascinated by everything you're doing, and I've just really enjoyed this time with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me in.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, do it again.
This show has been brought to you in part by the real estate pros at the Mallett Integrity Team. When you're looking to buy or sell, you need them on your side. Why settle for less when you can have real estate done right? Give them a call at 512-829-2062 or get more info at mallettintegrityteam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at malletandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.